Thank you very much. Our next speaker was the former Commanding General of the 1st Marine Division in Iraq and the 34th Commandant of the Marine Corps. Please welcome General James Conway.
Madam Ajavi, distinguished panel, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to be with you here today. Madam Ajavi, I too want to salute you for your efforts over these last weeks and months. Your ability and that of your organization to marshal the support that you have in Europe and in the United States, I'm absolutely convinced has saved lives of your countrymen in Iraq. So from a military man's perspective, you take your wins where you can find them. You still have, in the words of an American 19th century poet, many miles to go before you sleep. But your efforts to date have been remarkable, and we respect them. I will talk today about just two brief subjects. The first, the people of Ashraf. Each of us has our association with them. Each will vary. Mine goes back to 2004 when I took the 1st Marine Expeditionary Force back to Iraq and into the province of Anbar in the west of Iraq. There was at that time a small satellite camp inhabited by MEK or personnel who would eventually go to Ashraf. My intelligence officer reported to me that, well, we also have a terrorist camp in the middle of our sector. As it turns out, when we investigated that, nothing, of course, could have been further from the truth. I became Commandant. In my period, we sent 3 rotations of Marines to guard Camp Ashraf. I visited them, and what I found there reflected some of the same things we had seen outside Fallujah. These were warm and engaging people, and in no way what we would consider terrorists. Over the last 3 years, it's been my observation that the people at the camp have become political pawns. There, I think, are 4 players at this table. Of course, Iraq and Iran, the United States, and the Europeans as represented by the European Union and the UN. Each has a different sort of perspective. You probably noted that the American speakers today are reluctant to go overseas and be hypercritical of our nation. They will certainly speak frankly and tell the truth. But I will follow that pattern and say that at least my perspective of the U.S. approach is least understandable of all of those at the table. It makes absolutely no sense to me, on the one hand, to continue to list the MEK as a terrorist organization, and yet most recently for our Secretary of State to employ 2 ambassadors and their staff to do all that they can to look after their concern and their welfare. Tribute here to the Europeans. We have observed for decades their increasing concern for human rights and human dignity. They have already done the right thing with regard to delisting, and now they are putting, I think, an appropriate amount of focus on trying to take care of things in Iraq to the best of their abilities to do so. To the dismay, I think, of Americans who have fought and served in Iraq, we see the Iraqi government as continuing an approach of accommodation to the Iranian government. That is not what we thought we were creating. It's not what we thought we were fighting for, and yet it appears on an increasing scale based on what we're seeing today. The Iranian government, on their part, I think, is happy to see the amount of influence that they can bring to bear on the Iraqi government. How much will they be able to fold them under their domain? It certainly yet remains to be seen. But again, the trend lines are not good. Donations will claim otherwise. 3,500 people, 3,500 people. What they do represent, I believe, is an idea, a passion, a powerful belief that first had voice in America and then in France, most recently on the streets of Tehran and in Arab countries, that says that free people everywhere ought to have a say in how they are governed. Ladies and gentlemen, ladies in particular, pardon my French, but that scares the hell out of the Ayatollahs. and increasingly, I fear the government in Iraq. To the degree I'm not sure that they will want to settle this situation as soon as we would like. I'm afraid it could play out for political gain on the part of both of those nations, and in fact, if it does, we and the rest of the world owe protection and concern for the people of Camp Ashraf. I think there are several things that must be done. First, of course, and you've heard it from virtually every speaker, we have to delist. The United States of America has to start with that. That's the catalyst for everything else that will take place, to include eventual relocation. Secondly, although I think it's very commendable that we have seen the UN and the EU issue mandates, I think they have to put teeth into what they're talking about here, with the eventual arrival of either blue helmets or U.S. troops on deck to ensure the protection of these people in what is increasingly becoming a hostile environment. These people are just that. They are thinking, feeling, talented human beings. They need to be involved as a part of what's taking place. Second topic. I'll have to move quickly. I fear there was a collision on the horizon between us, the United States, and Iran over development of Iranian nuclear weapons. We have had a checkered past. We both have had miscalculations, but this development of nuclear weapons overshadows virtually everything else. The U.S. position is that nuclear weapons by Iran are unacceptable. Iran has tried to mask it. They have said, well, we need to develop nuclear power. Iran has oil reserves equivalent to that of the greatest nations on earth. To say that they need to augment their petroleum with nuclear power is like saying that Eskimos need to invest in freezers. It is just not necessary. After Iran declares a nuclear capability, there are options there, but none of them are really very tasteful. We can blink and say that we will approach it from a diplomatic perspective, attempt containment, but the fact is what that will likely result in is simply an arms race in the Middle East, with Turkey and Saudi Arabia being the principal participants. We can attack, either in a limited fashion or in a full-out fashion. Limited attack, on the analysis of most involved, will only delay. It will not eliminate the program. Full-out attack would be very difficult. Tehran is a long way from the beach. It is difficult terrain. And unfortunately, thousands of Iranians and U.S. troops and civilians would die. There is perhaps a third good option, and that is from within. In fact, it's ironic, but the solution to both points I've talked to you about have commonality. The opportunity for the people of Ashraf to eventually go home, the opportunity to avoid serious conflict between the U.S. and Iran, both could result from change from within to change out the Iranian regime. There are storm clouds on the horizon, but they don't have to affect us. We need an Iran that does not seek nuclear weapons, that does not support international terrorism, and that does not kill its own citizens on its streets. Rather, one that encourages individual freedoms, provides representative government to its people, and seeks international and regional relationships. Ladies and gentlemen, we need an Iran that, if you listen to her closely, is the one that is envisioned by Madame Rajavi. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker has held a variety of senior military positions in the U.S. government over the years, including Deputy Commander of the United States European Command. Please join me in welcoming General Chuck Wald.
Thank you. I hope you've enjoyed the speeches as much as I have, because every time I hear these guys speak, it's invigorating, inspiring, and Number two is when Patrick Kennedy ripped up his speech, I did mine too, so I'm going to speak about things from my heart, and I'm not going to use my speech today. Three, if you look at at least the United States contingent here on the panel, which I know all of them to a different degree, either reputationally or personally, these individuals represent what's best about America leadership, frankly. And that leadership on this panel is what's needed to solve the problem that you all are here about today. So I would commend all the panel here for what you're doing for a worthy cause. And I want to talk a little bit about how I see this problem. But first I'd like to thank Madam Rajavi for her leadership. I think the problems that we face in the world today, this is one of them, by the way. It represents what we all should stand for in a global arena, world that we live in today. Takes courageous leadership. In America today, we're in the middle of a presidential campaign. And for those that live in America, that's all you hear about. Some of the people on this stage have been through those campaigns. They know what it's all about. When you hear the things that we talk about in America and make important, it's trivialized by what you all are facing with Ashraf. I have to stand here today and say, I think today we're all Ashrafis, and I believe that sincerely. You know, it kind of struck me when I heard Frau Sismuth make her remarks. She's from Germany. I'm of German descent. I lived in Germany 15 years. I love Europe. I love the international community. I've been to 144 countries in the world. I spent most of my time in foreign military operations of some sort. And I looked at that and I think, you know, we're really a global community today. We can't look at ourselves as individual nations. We can't look inward. And frankly, again, without being critical and going back to what General Conway said, there's a tendency to try to avoid being critical of our own nations in public particularly. But I will say that when I hear the debate about what's going on in America today, I'm almost embarrassed about how trivial some of the issues are compared to some of the things that we face, particularly people like yourselves and the residents of Camp Ashraf. We owe it to ourselves in the world today to be a global community. Your problems are our problems, and it's not going to go away, and we have to act that way. You know, I grew up in the Midwest of America, probably a lot like many of you out there when you grew up in your. And in America, in the Midwest, things are simple. You take care of your neighbor, you trust your neighbor, you have a certain amount of integrity. When you say something, you live up to it. You can be trusted. You care about other people, they come first. We need to act that way in the global community as well. We have a moral obligation to do that. And we don't have the opportunity or the option to have selective morality. So we can't say to ourselves that one person's problems or a group of people like the people of Ashraf aren't important enough to us today because the acquiescence to a regime in Iran is more important. That is immoral, and we need to stop acting that way. Number two, and I'm going to make this short, we make complex problems, we have to have complex solutions. There are simple solutions many times to complex problems. Many times when we look at a complex problem and start developing complex solutions, it's an excuse for inaction. There's no reason today why the Camp Ashraf issue and the MEK listing cannot be solved. It's as simple as that. And there's only one step we need to take to solve this problem today, and that's to delist. Thank you very much.